First of all, I would love to sincerely thank the organizers of this magnificent international conference on Paradox to Paradigm, Architecture in an Age of Network Society. Chairman of the conference, Dr. Ujjwala Chakradev. Organizing secretaries of the conference, Dr. Priya Chowdhury and Dr. Sampada Peshwa, and the chairman of the session, Dr. Ujjwala Chakradev. My sincere thanks go out to Dr. Priya Chowdhury, who has worked patiently and tirelessly to make this conference a tremendous success. Thank you very much for inviting me over from Sri Lanka to be here today and to make this presentation on changes of the cultural context in Sri Lanka from the pre-colonial period to date, which will discuss briefly the historic past of Sri Lanka in terms of paradox that have become paradigms that continue as traditions in Sinhala vernacular, Portuguese, Dutch, British colonial periods, post-colonial, 2 of Geoffrey Bawa's works, and 3 of mine. Changes of the cultural context in Sri Lanka from the pre-colonial period to date, with special reference from paradox to paradigm. What is paradox? A paradox can be defined as a contradiction to a norm, an oddity, which is another term to describe paradox. Similarly, paradigm is when it becomes a norm, an example that is worthy of imitation or duplication. Sri Lanka. I come from an island in the Indian Ocean referred to the Pearl of the Indian Ocean, Sri Lanka. Formerly known as Ceylon, the island is geographically placed in the South Asian subcontinent, in the tropical zone at a latitude of 8 degrees to the north and a longitude of 80 degrees to the east. Hanging as a teardrop at the southernmost tip of India, separated by the Pork Strait of the Indian Ocean, the Paradise Island is closely linked to Dhanushkodi in the southernmost tip of India and Thalimanna in the northwestern tip of Sri Lanka by an underwater coral reef named Adams Bridge. The island can be described as a dramatic green tropical paradise with spectacular mountains that rise up to 2,500 meters in the south central region. This 66 square kilometer green island has a recorded history of over 2,500 years. Sri Lanka is blessed with natural beauty of all kinds. Its climate is grouped as dry, intermediate, and wet zones with a temperature between 28 and 32 degrees with a high humidity level during certain seasons. Overview. Change is related to time, be it art, architecture, or as a matter of fact, anything. However, change is directly linked to cultural context in a country that is brought about by the rulers, culture, and cultural beliefs of the time. Yes, in today's network society, there are tremendous transformations that have taken place that have radically changed not the design per se, but the design development process, which with various softwares that have been used, such as Revit and many others who simplify the development process of design. However, I do not believe that various technologies could replace architectural conceptualization, though I am of the opinion that it could certainly assist the development process. In this age, the principal architect of one country works with his teammates in another country via virtual meetings. Similarly, I, as an honorary fellow of the and an international member of the American Institute of Architects, is a part of a virtual meeting in organizing the International Regions Conference in Singapore. At this meeting, members of the steering committee of different parts connect with the AIA headquarters in Washington, D.C. to discuss matters pertaining to the conference that reduces the cost of air travel, accommodation, time, and the cost of meetings. Likewise, I have virtual meetings with the RIB in London, where the chair of the RIB, as the chair of the RIB chapter in Sri Lanka, at the Regions and Nations meeting in London, thus, once again, reducing time and related costs. Equally, today, internet shopping takes place in a large scale, reducing places and related costs. Internet travel and hotel booking will make travel agents obsolete. Internet banking is yet another aspect that minimizes rental and administration costs of banks. However, I am strongly of the opinion that architectural conceptualization needs the human brain and the human hands, touch and feel of design. Sinhalese vernacular architecture. Sri Lanka has had a long tradition, architectural tradition, dating back from the ancient kings. These indigenous architectural traditions in Sri Lanka were motivated and determined by the internal conditions within the country from factors such as climate, culture, and religion. The endemic buildings were constructed using wattle and daub, laterite, brick, paddy hatch, and woven coconut leaves. They embodied courtyards for light and ventilation, and which is today being copied by many architects as traditions. The roof umbrella was the predominant feature that has a number of variations, becoming a paradigm of the period. This roof feature could be clearly seen in the works of Geoffrey Bawa, where he draws inspiration from the vernacular, using the large roof spans, making it a paradigm of the period. Sri Lanka, formerly known as Ceylon, was colonized by the Portuguese, the Dutch, the British, before it regained its independence in 1948. Portuguese colonial architecture. The Portuguese reigned over the coastal belt of Sri Lanka from 1505 to 1658. Their arrival was largely accidental, seeking control of the commercial over territorial contests. They captured the northwestern maritime ports, while the Sinhalese kings occupied the central part of Sri Lanka. This map shows the Portuguese colonial flag, coat of arms, and the seaports that they garrisoned. Unfortunately, there are very few or almost no traces of Portuguese architecture in Sri Lanka, other than a few churches. However, the Portuguese left behind a strong effects of religion, Roman Catholicism, along with a legacy of names and an infusion of Portuguese language into the native Sri Lankan language, Sinhalese. Very few or none of the Portuguese architecture is seen in Sri Lanka, since their successors, the Dutch, built over whatever architecture they left behind. Dutch colonial architecture. The Dutch occupation in Sri Lanka was from 1640 to 1796. It is said that the Sinhalese kings invited the Dutch merely to chase away the Portuguese, whom they despised. This slide shows the Dutch colonial flag, ports they garrisoned, and the coat of arms. The Dutch influence is seen in religion, the Dutch Reformed Church, the legal systems with the introduction of the Roman Dutch law, as well as in cuisine in many aspects of social and cultural life. The Dutch who introduced the veranda concept, which got wet during the monsoon weather, became a paradox of the time that soon became a paradigm when Geoffrey Bawa uses it extensively in the hotels, making it a nightmare to upkeep, while being a feast to the eye. Similarly, the courtyard concept, introduced by the Dutch to bring in light and ventilation, has become a paradigm that is widely practiced by Geoffrey Bawa and many architects, including myself. British colonial architecture. The British occupied Sri Lanka in 1796 with little resistance from the Dutch. This slide shows the British flag, the Union Jack, the extent of British rule, and their coat of arms. The British rule could be said to be the most influential of the three, that reflected the architectural styles that followed the monarchy of the mainland. Thus, Georgian, Regency, Early Victorian, High Victorian, Greek, Gothic Revival, Late Victorian, and Edwardian were the styles prevalent in Britain that appeared in their colonies about a decade after its appearance in the mainland. In Sri Lanka, all around us, we see the heritage left by the British during their occupation. Apart from the large body of architecture, they left behind an educational system, a legal system, and most of all, their language, which today has become a universal dialect. All these architectural and cultural influences of the period, which have appeared as paradoxes, soon with time become paradigms. The British tradition of hiding the large roof behind a pilaster, with time, soon became a paradigm. Post-British colonial architecture. The British rule ended 70 years ago in 1948, with Sri Lanka gaining independence. Post-independence, the British architectural styles continued until the first generation of Sri Lankan architects who qualified in Britain broke away from the British colonial idiom, thus developing their own style, creating a paradox. Influences of the modern movement were seen creeping in during the post-colonial era, creating a paradox. New technologies, new materials such as steel and glass being introduced during this era, creating a paradox. However, amongst those who broke away from the post-colonial idiom was Geoffrey Bawa, who made a huge impact on Sri Lankan architecture, referring back to the vernacular and the Dutch colonial in his glossary of work. Geoffrey Bawa's work, which broke away from the British colonial idiom, could be referred to a paradox that with time became a paradigm. Geoffrey Bawa. Born in 1919 to an influential family, a Muslim father and a French mother, Geoffrey Bawa qualified as a barrister. After completing his studies in Britain, he decided to tour his legal studies in Britain. He decided to tour the world. On his return to Sri Lanka, he tried his hand on doing up his own property, Lunuganga, being influenced by the Spanish gardens of Alhambra. Soon, he realized his potential after speaking to my father, Dr. Justin Samarasekara, who by then was a founder member of and president of the Ceylon Institute of Architects, an initiator of architectural education in Sri Lanka. Geoffrey Bawa returned to London to embark on his formal education at the AA. Geoffrey Bawa soon became a master of space, whose work was originally described as a paradox, as something out of the ordinary. Soon his work was recognized world over, thus becoming a paradigm. I would like to discuss with you two of his hotel projects, the first being the Triton Hotel, Heriton's Ahungalle, one of my favorites, and his most controversial paradoxes of the time, Kandalama Hotel, his one but the last hotel project. Today, Kandalama has become a paradigm, being copied by many hotels in the vicinity amidst the jungle. Triton Hotel. The hotel is approached by a main road via a densely populated area through a narrow, winding roadway that snakes away and bursts into open space onto a staggering water body in which a series of ghostly coconut trees stand, doubling up in height with its reflections. Beyond this spectacle is the hotel's sparse lobby, succeeded by yet another water body, the swimming pool, against which a catamaran glides along the horizon of the Indian Ocean, an amazing concept visualized. The two wings spread on either side of the central building, thus opening out onto the beach. Here, Geoffrey uses the natural setting of the site, which itself is a paradox, making it an amazing paradigm. Can this concept be conceptualized using modern technology, is my question. However, during the monsoons, the hotel becomes a nightmare, the rain beating in horizontally into the colonnaded lobby. His solution for the hotel was to simply employ more staff to mop up the wet areas. Kandalama Hotel, Tambula, 1991 to 1994. Atkins Spence, who had built the stunning Triton Hotel with Bawa on the coastal belt of Ahungalle, invited him to create another in 1991 in the dry zone beside the ancient Kandalama Lake on a huge rocky outcrop that formed a natural bund of an ancient tank. It is simply amazing the manner in which Geoffrey conceptualized this project. Bawa, who chose the site while on a helicopter ride, found the site to have surprise, drama, mystery, and suspense. Across the Kandalama tank was the magnificent view of the ancient 5th century rock fortress, Sigiriya, at a distance. He wanted the hotel concept to be formed as a mouth of a cave at the top of a ridge, reached by a huge ramp, a cave-like corridor which led from the entrance through a ridge to reveal the hotel's main lobby and the terraces beyond, with a view across the Sigiriya tank. The snaking form made it possible for these residential wings to echo the shape of the ridge. Therefore, the journey of the rooms run along the side of the overhanging cliff face. In some places, the structure burrows into the ridge, while in some others, it stands proud, allowing the rocky landscape to run beneath. The concrete frame carries an outer skin of timber sunbreakers, which in turn supports the screen of vegetation with flat roofs that turns into a series of gardens. The use of flat roofs is starkly expressed concrete frame of the skeletal structure marked the radical departure from Bava's earlier works, creating a paradox with accusations and protests that he was polluting the natural environment with his concrete structure. As a result, Kandalama Hotel, under a cloak of foliage, melts into the rock with its thick cover of vegetation, making it almost invisible. It has beautifully matured into a paradigm today. Thus, this hotel perhaps becomes one of the best examples of a paradox that with the passage of time matures into a paradigm. Can this concept be conceptualized using modern technology is another question. Nela de Zoysa. I wish to present to you 3 of my award-winning works: Suzuki Maruti showrooms, offices of the Ministry of Ports and Aviation, and lastly, the hotel, house number 8. Suzuki Maruti Complex 2005. The Suzuki Maruti Complex won SLI's award under Commercial Buildings in 2007, the Jeffrey Bava Commendation Award in 2008, and the Sri Lanka Institute of Architects Award under Interiors in 2009. Physical context being the generator of this design, the Suzuki Maruti complex was certainly the paradox, being a cynosure of the locality, overlooking the large open space, the general cemetery. This complex contained showrooms, offices, and workshops and stores of Suzuki Maruti. The concept was to create a linear, elegant, aerodynamic structure with a futuristic image, which resulted in exposing the structure and creating an outer skin of transparent glass. The orientation of the building to face both roadways evolved, creating 2 linear winged structures which gave a greater visual impact from the outside, providing more exhibition area for the automobiles. The meeting points of the 2 wing structures in creating a nodal point had an imposing grand entrance with a high glass canopy. The roof, which was a major feature, was inspired by the Maruti logo, which had 2 wings. This creation, the soaring aerodynamic roof and the large volume space within certainly created a paradox. While keeping to the skeletal structure of white as the background, colorful cars punctuated the showrooms as colored jewels against the clinically white structure. At night, when illuminated, the building becomes alive as a faceted diamond that catches the light, thus making the Suzuki's glow like a multi-colored jewels against the sparse minimalistic setting. Ironically, my client, who was skeptical about the success of the project because of its locality, driving out in a new car facing a cemetery alone was a paradox. When the client recovered his investment, it didn't last a paradox for long. When the client recovered his investment of its land and building, all in 6 months, making it a financial paradigm. Few years later, a bad imitation appeared for Honda in the outskirts of Colombo. The Suzuki Maruti complex obviously became a paradigm with imitations. Ministry of Ports and Aviation, 2005. Ministry of Ports and Aviation took me on to design their ministry offices in a listed building, colonial building named Custom House, obviously built for its own purpose, opposite the harbor. The Honorable Minister, who was a graduate from St. Martin's School of Design, London, envisaged a stimulating, comfortable working environment of his own offices, and the main requirement of the project was to create a spacious, dynamic atmosphere for the ministry offices. The building, in a dilapidated condition, with roof leaks and decayed windows that were hanging on one hinge, had to be restored to its original glory before anything could be done. Linoleum had been stripped off, Burmatic floorboards. The design philosophy focused on bringing out the unique character of the building and playing with light and color to highlight the workspaces and create ambience, a working ambience, which was striking and eye-catching and comfortable. The words ports and aviation prompted the use of greens and blues, which were boldly used in the contemporary interiors in contrast to its exterior. The office spaces of the minister and his staff were fitted out in glass partitionings to allow space to visually flow. The Honorable Minister's room and the boardroom, the Honorable Minister's room and the boardroom were located in the prime location of the office that afforded breathtaking views of the harbor. The other offices and facilities were located overlooking the gardens of the President's house. For security reasons, these windows demanded to be shut. The claustrophobic spaces were dressed up in mirror to give an illusion of space. Each of the rooms had 15-foot by 2.5 feet artwork in its rooms in a transition of colors that was found in the conference room. In this project, colors, textures, and spaces are carefully orchestrated to bring life and animation to the office spaces to celebrate the essence of the ministry and make it a conducive environment for its primary and secondary uses. Reflecting back, the use of bold colors in a public sector government establishment with confidence and authority was certainly a paradox of the time. However, with this project winning the SLI Color Award in 2007, with time, it has become a paradigm, and with other ministers trying to grab the office with a cabinet reshuffle. House number 8. This project won me the Sri Lanka Institute of Architects Color Award in 2016, and also a Sri Lanka Institute of Architects Merit Mention in 2016. The house number 8, built as a steel structure with a brick infill, sits on a 712 square meter piece of urban land in Colombo. The site is bounded by the 30-foot approach road where a beautiful Ahalas tree, Cassia fistula, sits on the edge of the northern boundary. House number 8 is designed as 2 pavilions on the east and west, running in the north and south directions, linked by a structural glass bridge. under which an ultramarine blue reflecting pool flows. The pavilions are enclosed with large glazed doors, giving the house the necessary permeability, light, and ventilation. The raised timber-bordered walkway runs along the center spine, connecting the red slatted external door with the main teak entrance door at the link over the expanse of structural glass, creating magical reflections upon entry. The ultramarine blue reflecting pool bisects the pavilions and runs under the structural glass link to originate from a double cascaded water feature against a 24-foot hand-cut granite wall. The eastern pavilion contains the living, bar, dining areas, which are the master bedroom, study, study on the mezzanine floor, and the master bathroom. Western pavilion contains a triple carport, pantry, service areas, visitors' rooms, visitors' bedroom, above which is an audiovisual room. The cantilevered steel staircase opens out into a live wall of laterite in a vale of various types of indigenous plants growing on it. Red is boldly used on the entrance and garage doors to give the house number 8 a distinct identity while contrasting with the predominant shades of gray of the granite boundary with titanium reliefs against the cascading yellow blossoms. Flexibility is provided for mood lighting on the fingertips of an iPad with the home automation system for intelligent lighting. Finer attention is given to the lighting under the plinth to make the eastern and western pavilions seem afloat. The success of house number 8 has been the achievement of this design that flows with much fluidity, spatially, horizontally, and vertically, creating effective visual effects while providing the desired comfort levels using natural ventilation. The spatial flow of the house effectively permits the interior to merge and interact with the exterior and vice versa. The sun's rays cast magical shadows and reflections of the series of irregular pergolas along the raised walkway and sunshades in and around the house, creating unbelievable rhythm. The design concept molds the desired levels of privacy and comfort to be experienced by the inmates who value seclusions. Building house number 8 using steel as a structural element with specialized expertise was certainly a paradox that soon became a paradigm with the effusive use of timber, making it a harmonious haven for living, overshadowing the industrial elements of steel. Thus, all this clearly defines the manner a paradox becomes a paradigm with a space of time and culture in breaking established norms with authority and boldness. Thank you very much for your indulgence.
Thank you.